Hey everyone, it's Dr. Hillary Hushower from Rangeline Chiropractic, and today I have a special guest. This is my friend Kristin Wedding. Hey Kristin.
Hey, it's great to be here.
I would love for you to tell everyone watching a little bit about your background. So, Kristin is not only a health coach, but a yoga instructor and many other things. And her background is not originally in this. And I thought it would be easier if she just tells us a little bit about herself and her background and everything that she's up to these days.
Sure. It's great to be here and to connect with you and your crew. So I'm a health and wellness coach and yoga instructor, and I focus on working with women who have autoimmune diseases, primarily whose biggest symptoms are fatigue, brain fog, some pain, and mood issues. And so that is pretty common across autoimmune diseases. And before doing this, I worked in global health. So my background is in that. And so worked most recently, spent a long time at the VA, worked their global health policy, and was still living in DC at the time. And so in my, early 30s, I was diagnosed with MS. And it got to the point where got diagnosed, got put on an immunosuppressant, and technically went into remission, but I still felt awful. And so I was seeing all the traditional, the Western medicine doctors, and the options were really more drugs or like this was as good as it was going to get. And I just didn't feel like that was enough. I was 32, had a new baby, and wasn't ready to just kind of dial it in. So I tried everything and eventually came up with a system that works for me. And I pretty much live symptom-free now. I do take an immune modulator drug, but I don't really have to take any drugs to manage symptoms anymore. And so eventually I just felt like I needed to be able to share this information with other women. So I opened a business, became a health coach, started teaching yoga, and really have integrated all these practices now so I can share them with other people going through the same thing so they don't have to suffer the same way.
Mm-hmm. And we were chatting earlier, two of the most common autoimmune diseases that you see or talk to are patients with MS and RA. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking like you would see a lot more like fibromyalgia, but maybe that's more of what I see in my office, but a lot of your clients with the MS, and I think that's easy to relate to, right?
Yeah, I think that has a big thing to do with it, that it's relatable. I understand kind of what they're going through, but there are so many similarities between the autoimmune diseases, especially I think fibromyalgia, RA, MS. I see a lot with like Hashimoto's too, some of the hormone issues as well.
And Hashimoto's is kind of on the rise a little bit too. I've been hearing more and more of that. So I'm sure there's people watching that don't even know they have one of these diseases, which is crazy too,
Yeah. And if you have one autoimmune disease, your chances of developing another one or multiple are a lot higher. So I see a lot of that of people who have, the laundry list of disease.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. As a health coach, go into that a little bit about diet for patients with autoimmune diseases.
Sure. So one of the biggest questions I get is, what do I eat? I feel like everyone I talk to are Googling in the middle of the night, what do I eat for MS, RA, whatever disease it is, fill in the blank. And so the truth is, in my opinion, if there was one diet that worked for everyone, we'd all be doing it and we'd be cured. And as a health coach, I get frustrated when I see a lot of like the solutions that are sold really simplified into just eating gluten-free or dairy-free or a paleo or keto diet or whatever it is, or just taking certain supplements, because it puts so much of the burden back on the person with the disease when they could be doing all of those things and still feel like crap. Mm-hmm. So, and I have like a personal story because I spent 6 months doing a super restrictive autoimmune protocol diet. where I basically could eat nothing. And 6 months later, I still had all the same symptoms. And I'm like, you know what? I'm at this point afraid to eat everything. I'm hungry all the time. I've lost a lot of strength and I don't feel good. So like something else has to be there. So I think, food is one big driver of one of the root causes of autoimmune disease, nutrition, and it's not everything. So for a lot of people, cutting out processed foods, cutting out added sugars, foods with a lot of pesticides, going for more like grass-fed, organic, really following more of like a whole foods diet is a great place to start. And from there, it's going to depend on you. So it's really that trial and error. So with my clients, I offer a gamut of nutrition options, but it's really getting to know your disease and what makes you feel better. Your body will tell you if you can't have dairy. You'll feel it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish there was just an easy, like, oh, you have RA, so this is your diet. Oh, you have lupus, this is your diet, but there just isn't, is there? So frustrating. Why don't we come with a manual?
And there's a lot of shame, I think, that comes if you have a disease and you are out and you have like a glass of wine or a piece of cake, and then you feel bad the next day if you've like cheated. And, it's just not that simple, I don't think. And our bodies are meant to be able to handle some indulgences, but, it is getting back to like, I think, eating mostly clean and then learning some of your triggers and how it affects you.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And then we also chatted that stress is way high up there. And I really feel like every patient that I see, stress makes it worse. And hello, we're in the midst of like the worst stress ever, and probably most of our lives, or most that we'll ever experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is just wreaking havoc on not only autoimmune diseases, but everyone's like spinal health and muscles. And I mean, so like, what are you telling your clients about stress right now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think stress is the biggest root driver of disease we have out there. And it's interesting, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more than that, when I was still working at FDA, I did a lot of work with the World Health Organization, and they were starting to name, they have a disease of the year. So that year it was stress, it was chronic stress. And I started doing a lot of research into it at that point, and it's since carried through. And the more I learn about it and the more I've like witnessed in my own life, I see what a big impact stress has. So the way I like to think about it is, say you have a fire. Say there's 2 people, me and my sister, we're identical twins, and we have kindling, nice dry logs, like stones, everything's set up all nice, lighter fluid maybe even on them. And then one of us gets an autoimmune disease. So I view stress as like the match that sparks the fire. And so it's the thing that ignites everything else, may be the same, but it's like that thing that will turn on certain genetic markers and environmental things and lead to disease. And that's usually accumulated over a lifetime. And then a lot of people with autoimmune disease will notice their symptoms get worse or an exacerbation come up during times like this, during the pandemic, during relational stress, work stress, financial stress. So I think it's important to attack it at a number of levels. There's a lot of different modalities we can use to get into stress management.
Well, I bet one thing that you use a lot is yoga.
Yes.
You're a fantastic instructor. But it seems to me that should be high on everyone's list right now, some yoga, meditation type of stress relievers. But if it was only as easy as just like turning off the stress and saying like, well, just don't be stressed anymore. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
How great would that be?
I love it when I feel like every woman who's diagnosed, at some point their doctor or their family member is like, it'd be great if you didn't have so much stress in your life. And you're like, thank you. Thanks for letting me know that. So I do approach it from a very holistic way. And I think it's more than just trying to shorten your to-do list or, have a better job, because ultimately it's being able to weather sort of the daily stress that we all face. And I think some great ways to do that are, one, through movement. And I like to call it movement and not exercise, because depending on where you're at and if you're in pain or limited in your mobility, anything can be considered movement that's like nourishing to your body. So I teach some chair yoga classes along with regular yoga. Sometimes even breathing, which I think is the biggest tool, can help with just moving the body, moving the oxygen through the body on days when you're really tired or can't, go out for a walk or something like that. I think that in order to unwind all this years of chronic stress and disease, it's like we really have to get down to it at a cellular level. And so that's trying to take almost the mind out of it a little bit. And I like to do that in yoga because it's really connecting sort of the mind and body and learning to trust the body again, but to experience the links again between what's going on in your body and really building that awareness. I think breath work is sort of the twin of it, that is kind of takes it to the next level, where you're able to really take the mind out of it and let the body start to heal on its own. So it's sort of a top-down approach and a bottom-up. We want to get it from our intellectual brains. Our minds need to understand why we're doing it, but our primitive brains like really respond to that breath work. And so we're able to decrease our stress response, lower our hormones that surge with stress, all of these things that help with inflammation, help with autoimmune responses, all of this that we can heal just through, I think, breath work and yoga.
It's interesting that you mentioned breath work. I have seen a lot more posted about that and a lot more workshops and certification classes. And I thought, yeah, that's amazing, because you didn't really hear about that a few years ago, or at least I didn't. And I stay up to date on a lot of stuff. So I've really been interested in a lot of it lately. We'll have to chat later on anything that you would recommend. What about, you mentioned a lot of symptoms as far as like fatigue and brain fog that you hear a lot about. Can you go into a little bit of that? Because there might be someone listening that is like, oh, it's brain fog is what I feel like. Because sometimes I think it's hard to put into words how you feel.
Yeah. So fatigue is like, it's a big issue. And I think people sell themselves short on how it affects them. So you get the physical fatigue, that feeling where you get in from the door and you want to lay on the couch and not change your clothes and stay there till the next morning. So that's, the physical fatigue. But then there's this deep cognitive fatigue where you'll lose words or feel like, oh, I just forgot what I was going to say or whatever. I used to have a strategy. I did a lot of public speaking at FDA where I'd have a list of words in the back of my head where I knew if I lost a word, that's how I could replace it. It like got to that point where you have to really troubleshoot. So the cognitive fatigue can just be like being overwhelmed by thoughts. It can be emotional fatigue. It can also hit from just sort of your environment. So if you're hit around a lot of noise or bright lights or music, that can also lead to the cognitive fatigue, this idea of like my mind can't focus and I can't think straight. Those are kind of common ways I hear it described.
I think that the computers and screens and stuff really bombard us with overstimulation for our like brain fatigue. And I think if you actually look and see how many hours we spent on it, like I know my phone will tell me and I'll think, well, that was a lot.
It's horrifying. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't want to see that next time.
Even when I think I'm being good, it's so high.
Like, no wonder I can't remember everything. And I go into a room and I'm like, why was I in here again?
Yeah. I mean, I think our environments right now, especially in quarantine, it's like they're set up for sensory overload and it just wears on our nervous system. And I mean, one of the biggest antidotes I like to do for that is to just, if you can get out for a few, like 10-minute, you don't even have to walk. If you can walk, that's great. But like just standing outside and staring vacantly, it's a great like reset. This again, doing some like a few minutes of breathing, deep breathing, that can help kind of clear it. But yeah, it really, I think the effect is cumulative. It builds over time. And so it takes a while to unwind, but there are definitely tools we can use for that.
Yeah, I agree with the getting out, even just sitting outside in the sunlight, or even if it's a cloudy day, just getting outside in some fresh air, right?
Yeah.
Without your phone or without any distractions,
Right.
If I could, I would be alone, but these kids keep following me everywhere.
Oh my gosh, right? My best gift this year for sensory overload, my husband got me AirPods for Mother's Day. So the noise canceling, it really helps if you're sensitive to sounds or earplugs, just anything.
I'm sensitive to people asking me for something all the time.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Same.
Let's see. Can you tell us a little bit more about the yoga that you do? You mentioned chair yoga. I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but I wanted to hit a couple points where maybe people could get in touch with you. There's a few places, and then just where you're doing your yoga and how to get in touch with you for health coaching.
Yeah. So I currently teach a couple yoga classes, a gentle class and a chair class at the hub in Carmel, but it's all online right now, so I'm on Zoom a lot. And we can post that in the comments. I can post a link. And then I also, the name of my business is Viana Wellness and Yoga. And so you can find me on social media or on Facebook at Kristin Wedding, Viana Wellness, _Viana Wellness, on Instagram, or at Viana Wellness on Facebook. And I have a website and stuff, but how I primarily work with people coaching at this point is through a program I developed called the Autoimmune Fatigue Solution. And it's not right for everyone, but it's a whole lifestyle mindset approach that has been getting great results with clients. And it's a lot of group coaching and really just a sustainable plan that kind of walks people through transformation, because I'm, like I said at the beginning, so sick of people like piling on all this stuff that you need to do when you're here because you have an autoimmune disease and you're exhausted, not because you want to become a chef. It's like things that need to be attainable for people. So yeah, it's great women and group and just sort of like support and accountability that I think feeds everyone's souls too, especially right now where we don't get as many connections.
I know. Well, and I know when patients first get diagnosed with any of the autoimmune diseases and they're looking for help, your Facebook group would be a great resource too, because I'm in that group and people reach out and we're just chatting how people are talking more in there and asking questions and like engaging. It's just so great to see and use as a tool and a resource, like a one-on-one, and asking people for help.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful for people to connect and to be understood by others. And so the name of this group is called Women Thriving with Autoimmune Disease. And I'd love to have, anybody join that's interested, but it really is a supportive community. And I think the ability to make those connections with other people going through what you're going through, who know what you mean when you say, like, I literally had to lay down after taking a shower, and they're not going to bat their eyes, versus like I say that to my husband and he's understanding about it, but he has no frame of reference for that. So it can really help you feel less alone and understood. So I'm loving that community.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you don't have to feel alone in it. And there's so many of us out there that have different things to help with, or different tips, or this worked for me, or just an easy as like, I hear you, girl.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. I think that's the other thing too, with so many autoimmune diseases, people don't talk about them. I never shared it with anybody but family and close friends until I left the FDA. I was always afraid for my career, not because anything they did, but just I was afraid I would be passed up over things versus someone who is healthier. So people don't talk about it. So this is also a community where people can be very open. It's private. It's a closed group, but it's a big supportive community there.
Well, thank you so much for being on today and telling us some little tips and stuff. I know that everyone listening now or later will can look up your information. We'll post that in the group. And I really appreciate your time today, Kristin.
Thank you. So great being here with you. I love all you're doing for everyone. It's always so helpful.
Well, thank you.
All right.